It. So today I'm really, really happy to be speaking to Jane about her film The Edge. How are you doing today, Jane?
I'm great. It's obviously evening in Australia. I'm tired because I have a 4-month-old, but to be honest, it's probably not a great excuse because I was always tired before then anyway.
Yeah, I could believe that. No, it's so weird for me because obviously it's like first thing in the morning here, so it's so different. But
It is. I've spent a lot of time in the UK and I absolutely
mm,
love it. So very fond of the place.
yeah, that's good. So first of all, I was wondering if you could introduce us to your film, just like a little bit about the plot and things like that. That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about three elite athletes and they're all women. So they're elite female athletes and it's set in this kind of really high stakes world of competitive sport. The women live together, train together, go to the institute together. One is a Japanese Paralympic swimmer, one is a First Nations powerlifter, and one is an Aussie track and field sprinter. And that's who I play. And I really wanted to highlight, obviously, that there are trials and tribulations personally and within their sport. So they're kind of they've got both arcs there of their personal journey and also their sporting goals.
Yeah. Um, and I was also wondering if you could give us a little bit of background on you because I know you put so much of yourself into this film. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of insight into how your journey in sport began and then how that sort of crossed over into filmmaking because I think that's yeah, super interesting because the careers are completely different.
It's funny that you say that because I think I spend a lot of time saying how similar they are. I'll start
Mm,
off with their similarities. I mean, the differences I think are quite obvious, but the similarities are that they're both performance-based ventures.
mm,
They're really both high stakes. There's a lot of competition in both of them, and there's a lot of loss in both of them. But for me personally, running and sport was always like my first love. One of my earliest memories is racing kids in the neighborhood.
yeah.
I was always fast. Like I won my preschool race and my primary school races and went to district and regionals and states and then nationals and eventually represented Australia at an international level. But I just I loved running. It was just so freeing to me. I mean, I think it's fun to win as well. And I was good at it. So I used to win. And I I had a really, really lovely and supportive mother, I think, who never let me box myself in because people always used to be like, so what do you do? And for me, sport was always part of that identity. You know, I'm a runner, I'm sporty, I'm fit. But if people would ever say, oh, so you're a tomboy, I'd be like, what's that? I'd be like, a girl that wants to be a boy. And I'd say, no, no, I'm very much a girl, very much want to be a girl. I just like sport. And it was really funny that that was always something that was said to me. And I liked everything really passionately. As a kid, I think I was just really into trying lots of new things. I did dancing and swimming, and I guess they're both sporty things. But I just was obsessed with films. Loved Disney films. Every time I did some Daredevil stunt, you can see I've got a scar on my
Yeah.
forehead, and I fell off something and cracked my head. I was always bribed with films because I always loved films, and I used to say I'm going to be an Olympian, and then maybe I'll be in Hollywood. And I think, if I had had a less kind mother, they would have said maybe not. But my mom was like, yes, you'll do anything. It'll be great. And the older I got, the more I realized that people try to box you into things quite quickly. You know, you are the athlete or you are the drama kid or you are this. But for me, yes, cinema was my escape. I adored it. I loved storytelling. I loved books. But I also especially loved the crossover when I saw, the world of sport meet film, and I saw people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and The Rock later on who'd been able to kind of do this shift. And I
Mm,
realized that, okay, let me be the athlete. Let me try and make my Olympic dream come true.
yeah.
And I always felt like when I wasn't passionate about sport anymore, I'd know, and that would be my indicator to channel, I should say, energy into something else. So that's exactly what I did. And I moved to Vancouver to pursue acting after I gave up sprinting after the 2018 Commonwealth Games nomination trials, which were on the Goldie, so pretty
Mm,
close to me. I'm a Queensland girl in Australia, and just really wanted to see myself represented. And I'd been someone who, really paid attention to things like, well, why aren't there more female-led sporting narratives?
yeah.
Why? I was like, and to be honest, I still can't answer that incredibly well because I do think women in sport are marketable.
Mm,
Um, But then I just eventually got to a stage where I was like, that's fine, I'll make the movie I want to see.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And I think I can definitely sympathize, I think, with I think yeah, when you speak about it, I completely agree. I think things like sport, which are very intense and require a lot of passion, can easily be carried over into something like film because that requires so much dedication, which you definitely had for this film because I know you wrote it, acted in it, directed it, and produced it. So I was wondering, what was your favorite part in the making of this film? Because you played so many roles in it being created.
Oh, that's a really good question. Honestly, I felt like different people. It felt like I was wearing so many different hats that the experiences are almost not comparable.
Mm,
I will say that producing was probably the thing I knew the least about,
yeah.
and maybe the most challenging because producers are in the film for the long haul. I always said that actors are kind of like the sprinters of the filmmaking world. Like it's short, sharp, and powerful and tense. Um, but then it's kind of over in a flash.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed writing it. I really enjoyed bringing these characters to life. I mean, I based the character Yui off my good friend Mei Ichinose, who's a Japanese Paralympic swimmer.
Mm.
And, I had so much empathy for her. I really enjoyed bringing it to light, and then I liked filming, but it was incredibly intense.
Yeah.
Um, Directing felt really liberating because I felt like I was able to understand actors in a whole new light. Like I'd been in front of the camera before, but not really in a sense where like I was just focused on me. Whereas like as a director, you feel like, I guess, the parent of the film and
Yeah.
you're like, coaxing everyone through everything. And then producing, I think I was quite good at it because I heard people say a few times that no one's ever going to be more passionate about your film than you. And I do think that's true.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I felt like I had to become a marathon runner to be a producer. So there were definitely aspects of every part of that I liked, but
Mm.
challenging bits too.
Yeah, no, I could totally see that. And I was wondering also because I read that you worked with Ron Howard, and I wondered sort of how that influenced how you created this film and approached it.
Yeah, I've been obsessed with some of the big directors that I've actually been lucky enough to work with. I was obsessed with Ron
Mm.
Howard, and I've actually worked on two of his projects. He
Mm.
filmed 13 Lives, where I was a cast member. Um, and that experience was just lovely. The cast on that were just lovely. And I tried not to only soak in the experience as an actor. And obviously, like when he gave me like acting cues, like he asked me to emphasize a different word or to do this, I was like, oh my
Mm.
God, it's Ron Howard. But on the flip side of that, I spent so much time just watching.
Mm.
Um, and I'd done a very similar thing with Joe Kosinski, who directed Spiderhead, and I was part of that. And he
Mm.
obviously did Maverick, and more recently he did the F1 movie.
Yeah.
And to see him direct, and just like like not stalker-ish, but yeah, just to really closely observe these people who are such titans in the industry of filmmaking was a
Yeah.
phenomenal thing. And I think something that I took from it was that they had a lot of clarity. Um, like their communication skills were really great in order to get their vision across, but also very different. Like Ron's got a really calming sort of presence on set.
Mm.
I don't think much can throw that guy. Probably still need to learn that a bit myself. But yeah, he's grown up in that world, so very
Yeah.
much an old hat.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And going back to the film itself, I was wondering how much of your own lived experience was put into the film because I know it was created through sort of the lens of your own experience, but I was wondering how much of what we see is actually taken from your own life because I felt like when I watched the film, which I loved, by the way,
Oh, thank
there
you. You're
were
very kind.
there were lots of moments where your like intensity I felt when you delivered lines I could almost see sort of like the athlete you because I think there was one point we were talking about what losing feels like and you're saying like it feels like
Yeah.
you've died and I really could almost see past the film and see into your own experience.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is lived experience, whether it's
Mm.
mine or someone else's. I obviously wrote the character Annie for myself, and I do feel like Annie is very similar to Jane, the athlete, but stripped away of all the ridiculousness. Like, I'm a bit silly in real life, and while I'm also incredibly competitive, she was someone who was very raw. She was someone who had just gone through a great loss.
Yeah.
While Jane has experienced loss in life, I don't really feel like that's the chapter of life I'm in. I mean, I'm blessed enough to have a really nice chapter of life right now, entering parenthood. But you could definitely relate to that character. And then Sylvia, I loved writing Sylvia, but I also felt a lot like that because I'm silly and I pull faces and I've I've had aspects of that character, and then writing May's character Yui, um, like especially the flashback scene. Um, that's actually directly lived experience taken from her own life, and so I asked permission from her to use that because it was a story that she'd shared with me, and then I actually got her to direct that one scene. Well,
Mm.
one, I don't speak Japanese, but two, it was too personal not to.
Yeah.
Um, and I've been very open too about unfortunately I have had teammates who have committed suicide, which was incredibly distressing for absolutely everybody that they'd come into contact with. I mean, it's a very far-reaching and ripple effect that it has, and the fact that I've known more than one female athlete who's committed suicide is incredibly distressing to me and something that I want to bring light to
Mm.
because these people are incredible people, and I feel like if you put certain people, these people who have this competitive mentality, and like it has to feel like the stakes are that high, and then put them through huge loss. Unfortunately, that's not the right environment without help. So I want to raise awareness for that.
Yeah.
And then I also read a statistics. Oh, I'm probably going to get this wrong, so forgive me, but I think it was like um, I think 30% of female athletes in this one particular survey had been like in some way inappropriately touched. And that to me was so shocking
Yeah.
until I kind of took a step back and thought about that. And I thought, okay, I mean, we do live in a patriarchal society.
Yeah.
Um, then we also, so for one, it's unfortunately sexual assault is more likely to happen to women than men, although it obviously can also happen to men. And then not only that, if you take young girls often away from caregivers quite early, they're placed in vulnerable situations again. And then you take them into this situation where they learn to trust certain people just implicitly because they just have to. And then unfortunately, you kind of set up a scenario where unfortunately things can happen. And it was really important to me to bring to light that particular issue too.
Mm.
And I think sometimes as women, we're reluctant to talk about the darkness of anything because we feel like it's almost undeserving. Because for me, sport remains one of the best experiences of my life. But it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that every single second of being a female athlete was something that I treasured. Obviously, there were the hard times. Obviously, there were the things that I didn't like. And for me, if we're able to kind of bring the dark aspects of that into the light,
Yeah.
well, that's beautiful, isn't it? Like we can talk about it, we can start conversations, we can make it something that we as a society can just better understand.
Yeah, no, I really felt that when I watched the film because I think as a woman watching it, it felt very empowering to see sort of both the light parts and the dark parts of not just being a woman in sport, but being a woman in general. I think you kind of show that in the film with such frankness, which I think is always a really brave and powerful thing to do, especially with the fact that it's influenced by your own experiences, which I wanted to ask you about. How did it feel to put these experiences out into the film in such a raw and honest way? Because it takes a lot of courage to do something like that. So, sharing anything personal with someone is hard, but sharing it with like so many people is much more difficult. So I wondered how that felt for you to do that.
I mean, it feels like you're getting up on stage naked, but to be honest,
Mm.
performing is kind of like that in general. I
Yeah.
feel like, and I'm going to extend that just beyond the world of acting. Like that's sport too. Every time you set up, you start on the starting blocks, you are risking a loss.
Mm.
Like, sure, you could win something, but like if there's, eight people in that final, seven of them are going to be losers. Only one of them is going to be the winner. So you're kind of vulnerable in that aspect too. And performing, I like to think that I've always had kind of a natural knack for acting,
Yeah.
and storytelling. But like any other skill, it needs honing. And when I studied at the Advantage Topic Studio in LA, and when I did a lot of the classes, something that really hit home to me was that the sort of method that works for me is understanding, maybe I'm not a serial killer, but I understand what it is to be angry.
Mm.
So to take authentic anger and to transform it into something. Um, and for me, like it's you're unable to separate the experience of being a woman from being a female athlete, right?
Yeah.
And so every single part of that is just like a roll-on effect. And when we had the cast and crew screening, a good female athlete of mine that I've known for a very, very long time, she brought her partner and
Mm.
she was like, "Oh, I'm not very good with words." So I was so excited for him to kind of see this. And his first comment when she said, "See, do you get it now?" And he said, she goes, this happened to me. And he said, "What? Did you have sex in the gym?" And she was like, "No." But after they laughed a bit about that, he said, "No, I do get it. I kind of have never just thought that obviously it's
Mm.
probably quite normal for you to compete with a period." And she was
Yeah.
like, of course. Like, how do you not, like, you're with me. How do you not know that?" And he's like, "I think it was just like, um, it was just something that I kind of had internalized, not really thought, but of
Yeah.
course that's something." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, okay, well, that's nice. That's a nice conversation starter."
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's why I really enjoyed the film for that because I think it does kind of remind you of the realities of, especially for female athletes. I think a lot of people often forget that, yeah, there are so many struggles that come with that that you have to keep performing under. And I think, yeah, a lot of people, but I think definitely a lot of men don't always see that. And I wanted to also ask you about the fact that you touch on so many like very real and very wonderful stories of minorities who have broken into the sport. Because I remember reading that you started writing the script at 15, which is absolutely incredible. And you wanted to sort of bring these LGBTQIA plus and First Nation and Paralympian stories into your film. So I wanted to ask, how did you make sure these were sort of accurately portrayed? I'm guessing it probably took like a lot of researching and things.
I mean, yes, a lot of research, but a lot of lived experience. I think I'm right what you know. When I
Mm.
was 15, I went on my very first Australian team to Greece. It was the
Oh,
World School Games. I was thrilled. Um, I didn't have the performance that I wanted to. I think our 4x100 team got like fourth, which is a devastating place to be in because you just miss out on the medal. And
yeah,
I didn't perform that well personally. And it had come right after my cousin had died. And for me, it was very obvious at the time that my personal life was being affected, and we'd just gone through this family tragedy. And
yeah,
obviously, that was, despite my best efforts, going to relay somewhat into my performance as an athlete.
mm,
And while we were talking, while we were, doing all this stuff, we used to watch a lot of like sport films before we'd go out and compete. And I think
mm,
I was half there and half somewhere else, but in that kind of dreamlike state that tragedy quite often brings on, I realized that try as I might, I couldn't find any female-led sporting narratives. Like, I mean, there was the bring it on, like kind of cheerleading or maybe dance, but nothing really gritty. Like the
no,
Chariots of Fire and the Friday Night Lights and I Remember the Titans, they were all, really male dominated. And I was like, well, like, and then I started getting a bit like, someone tell me, wait, is there a film about? And we just couldn't really come up with anything. And I think to this day, there's only um, two films that are female-led sporting dramas that have been nominated for Oscars, which in the big scheme of things is nothing.
yeah,
Um, and the more I got into that, I was like, women need to be represented. Women need to be represented in sport, in the media.
yeah,
But in that exact team, I was actually traveling with para athletes. And I
mm,
think the more vehemently I was kind of saying to them, why aren't there any female athlete films? They were like, female athlete films, like, what about just like para anything? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And then because they brought my attention to it, I really started thinking about the advertisement, of course, especially however many years ago. None of that was ever geared towards para athletes. And
yeah,
then I just went down, like I've never been on a team that doesn't have First Nation talent. And
mm,
then I think we only know what we know. And of course, I didn't kind of understand the privilege that I had, but the more I started thinking about being a minority, that is being a woman, even though we're not, you know what I mean.
yeah,
The more the light was shone on other minorities. And
mm,
every single team I've traveled with LGBTQIA plus athletes, and they've got a different journey.
yeah,
First Nations athletes, same thing. Para athletes, same thing again. And I think I've really delighted in recent years seeing women in sport being brought to the forefront, but also seeing like the Paralympics every single time get
yeah,
more and more views. And people do love watching it. We just need to give people a chance to love it. And so I kind of felt the same thing about like, let me shine a light. If my journey is kind of inextricably woven into these other minority issues, I want to do it. But just because I'd lived and trained and known a lot of para athletes and First Nations athletes, it didn't mean that I assumed I knew everything. I got May and Lily to consult on the script. I got other para athletes to consult on the script because
Yeah.
I wanted to write what I knew, but I also wanted to make sure that I hadn't stuffed anything up. And they were very patient and generous with me.
That's good. Yeah, no, I always have a big appreciation for people who do things like telling minority stories. Like for instance, I'm autistic and it's such a struggle to see anything in the mainstream that isn't negative. So I think it's really wonderful that you put such an emphasis on these stories because they are often tragedies. I think obviously when you think about the Oscars, like you said, you think of things like like Brokeback Mountain, for instance, they're always tragedies. And I think it's so important to have stories that that are more happy and more light than things like that, and they don't always have to end in tragedy. Um,
You're absolutely right. I think on that note, I'm trying to remember like Daniel Levy in Schitt's Creek said it was really important to him that he was a gay character that wasn't coming out and it was shocking. It was just that he was part of the furniture, he was
yeah.
gay. That was important. He could explain it to other people, but at least in the setting of his family. And that
Mm,
was very important to me too, because as someone who'd been friends with many para athletes, you
yeah.
kind of just like it's just not something you think of all the time. Like
No.
you just forget. Like the number of times I had May over for dinner and I'd hand her a knife and be like, "Can you cut this?" And then would be like, "Oh, wait, can..." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine." And
Mm,
like that's kind of as much as you'll ever do. Like you just forget because they're so capable. Like she always said that she had a hard time defining herself as disabled because she felt so able. And I
yeah.
was like, that's a really good way to put it because it's just like it was important to me that the characters don't go around being like, "Hello, Yui, the Paralympian with
Yeah.
your Paralympic classification," because A, it's
Mm,
not realistic, but B, like she's completely capable.
yeah.
And that's the story we wanted to tell.
Yeah, no, I really love that. And I think on that note, I was going to ask about the characters of Sylvia and Yui, because I was sort of again thinking about women in sport. Like I'm a big F1 fan, and it is it is awful to see the complete lack of women. And I think like the fact that sort of some women have obviously broken out into being parts of like the team or the garage, I always find that like it's emphasized so much, and it just kind of makes you realize like how few like strong women that have are highlighted in the sport. But I think that's why the characters of Sylvia and Yui, who are obviously played by real life like athletes and sports people, I think it was really wonderful that you created such strong characters for them. So I was wondering what was it like for you working with Lily and May, and also kind of beyond that, I know you sort of had other like Olympic medalists in the film. So what was it like kind of mixing these worlds of actors and real Olympians?
Well, it was a great experience for me working with the girls. I
Mm,
will say that women are underrepresented as directors, and
yeah.
I completely understand why. I mean, like, I think women are underrepresented in like the Fortune 500 companies and beyond too. But I think it's a shame because there are people who will always be like champion you, but then there are people, whenever you try and do anything different, who will
Mm,
also try and tear you down a bit. So unfortunately, while I think it's mostly positive, we have had a little bit of resistance, but we probably should have assumed that.
yeah.
And the girls, May and Lily, made that experience so much better. It was important for me that we didn't just have one trope. Like I think quite often that the female athlete is kind of like tough but sexy and
Yeah.
like she's like this and that. And to me, I wrote Sylvia before I found Lily. And then when I met Lily, I was like, oh my God, am I magic? I feel like I've created like my characters come to life because she was just that character.
Yeah.
But Lily has this beautiful effect on the people around her in that like she is the person who brings everybody up. Like to
Yeah.
be in her presence is to feel stronger. Like
Mm,
I've gone and done sessions with her and I've done all my PBs lifting with her because like you kind of just have to. Like she just like elevates you and she's so
mm,
tough, but
yeah.
like generous, but tough. And I feel like she's that character. And that character is so different to the quiet strength of the character Yui. And May kind of had said to me when I showed her the script, she said, I feel like this was me at the beginning of my Paralympian journey in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And she's like, because now I feel like more confident in myself and
Yeah.
who I am. And she said, but yeah, this reminds me of like, and but she said that a lot of people think that because I'm Japanese, or a lot of people think that because I'm like introverted or quiet, that that means that I'm not opinionated or like sassy. And it couldn't be further from the truth. May's actually very funny. She's got a
Yeah.
lot of opinions. And I think she does a great job at showing that evolution of the quiet strength.
Yeah.
And my character was different again. So there's not just one trope. We're all just people. And I
Yeah.
don't think they ever like they don't seem to worry about that in more conventional sporting narratives that feature men, but they do with women. So that was another thing where we tried to think all three of those female characters are quite strong and very different, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I completely see that. And I think they all felt like, I think all three of your characters, the central characters, kind of felt like their own people, but I feel like I would know them in real life. Like I feel like I could see parts of them in people that I know.
Yeah,
And I kind of was interested to ask about, because I've read a couple of interviews and I feel like I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, but I was curious about the romance aspect of the film because I think like you were saying, there is kind of this image of the female athlete in film who is sort of like strong and sexy and the challenge is sexy, which is, not always true.
yeah,
But I was wondering how important it was for you to show the struggles of the athletes to balance their personal lives and their professional lives. So sort of I found their struggles to kind of carve out their identities really interesting. And I think, um, we kind of in media recently, I think we really struggle with what feminism should look like. Like I kind of think back to the Snow White film where she was like, she can't, Rachel Zegler was like, oh, she can't have a man, she's completely independent. But I'm like, you can be a woman and express your femininity and express your emotions and also be independent. Like that is kind of what part of being a
absolutely.
woman is. So I was wondering, yeah, how did you find sort of showing that balance with the three characters?
Well, I was lucky that there were three characters because in that you can show them all taking very different routes. And it was
Yeah.
important to me, without giving the film away too much, it was important to me that they all make choices and they all make difficult choices, but they make the
Yeah.
choices that are right for them.
Yeah.
And like you're absolutely right. I mean, I've got a beautiful partner. We've got a daughter together, and I'm very happy, and I believe I can be a strong, independent woman with a man. And that doesn't mean that I believe that if you're single, you can't be strong and independent, or vice versa. You very much can be. It doesn't mean that, if you're in a LGBTQIA plus relationship, it's going to affect your independence either. And it was just important to me that we show that I think a bad relationship will always negatively affect your goals.
Yeah.
And I think a good relationship has the power to, uphold you and uplift you. But I
Mm.
also think we're complete people as we are.
Yeah.
And it's also okay to be a strong, independent individual, man, woman, everything. Yeah. And so, like, again, like, I think it was important for me to show that, like, there's always this, like there's so many TikTok trends at the end of every dancing movie, there's the big dance off and she gets the guy or she doesn't or she does this. But you're right, like there isn't just one right ending and there isn't just one right thing to do. I completely agree about your comment on femininity.
Mm.
Kind of like what I was saying when I was a kid, when people used to say, "Oh, you're sporty, so do you want to be a boy? Like you a tomboy?" And it always confused me because I was like, "What about sport inherently makes you think that I want to be a boy?
Yeah.
Like I am a girl and I love running and I love Star Wars." Every time anyone ever used to come into my childhood house, yeah, there'd be sporting Olympic posters and Star Wars posters and the Matrix posters, and they'd say, "Oh, we didn't know you had a son." And I'd, no, that's just Jane. That's what she's into,
Yeah.
and you're right. Like I think you can be absolutely stunning with a buzz cut, like go Sinead O'Connor. You can be absolutely stunning with long hair. It's I think the fact that we're allowing so much individuality and that variety and that can and like the new wave feminism of like, femininity can be wanting to be a stay-at-home, housewife, but it can also be wanting to run to be the CEO of a company, and all of that is okay. And like in a very roundabout way, I do think that's what the film says. Like a lot of people have said to me things like, oh, if it's a female-led narrative, like, are you man-hating or
Yeah.
whatever? And I've said very much not. Like I actually think the male characters are potentially much sweeter than the female characters.
Mm.
Um, I really loved the character of Caleb. He was a lot of fun to write, and Joe did a great job of bringing him to life. He's a very sweet, very generous character. Mark, was a really lovely character, and the lovely Ryan played him, and but they both did a really good job, I think, of being like kind of traditionally handsome men, should I dare say, like quite muscular, quite
Mm.
tall and whatnot, but then very, very gentle and very soft. And that was important to me too, to not play all the men as villain and all the, women as the heroes. Like we're all bits of both.
Yeah, no, I totally got that from the film, and I think it was, yeah, definitely more nuanced because I think sometimes it can cross over into just like men are the worst, and sometimes they are the worst, but not always. I know we only have about like 7 minutes left on this call, but I wanted to ask you, what's one thing you want people to take away from this film? Because I remember reading one of the taglines is that the film is more than a sports movie and it's a voice for every woman who's had to fight twice as hard to be heard. And I think that is definitely one of the most important messages. But I wondered if there was sort of one big thing that you would want people to take away from it, from watching it.
The biggest thing I think is to see athletes not as robots, but as individuals. Um, a lot of people like they'll see the Olympic performance and they'll literally be like, "Oh, they were a bit off tonight," and that's kind of where it ends. And they don't think about the years of everything and them as people, and we're not machines. We're people and trying our best. And I think that's important for me to show people as these whole people. But I also wanted people to see that um, anything, anything once you get too deeply involved in it can become dangerously obsessive.
Yeah,
And the choice needs to be there to remind yourself constantly, why are you doing this thing? And just because it was right for you to do it yesterday, is it still right for you to do it today?
yeah,
And that goal can look like anything. Like
yeah,
it doesn't need to be a sporting goal and it doesn't need to be a relationship goal or a career goal. Like it can be whatever you need it to be and whatever you choose it to be, because ultimately, whether you're an athlete or a normie or whatever, like we are whole people already.
yeah. No, I think that's really wonderful. And again, I really had a big appreciation for the film for telling such a such a strong story of women in sport, but also just in general. So thank you so much for your time, and good luck with everything in the future.
No, thank you very much. It's been a lovely, lovely Zoom.